So I think we've provided enough context for the theme of today's show, which is, let's not forget the the Third Plenum of the 20th Party Congress. So let's look at the upcoming session. What do we know about it?
Well, I think the first instance that actually caught my attention was that I think back in February, when General Secretary Xi Jinping was chairing basically a committee meeting. The committee is dedicated to comprehensively deepening reform. He mentioned that the year 2024 would be another monumental chapter in the comprehensively deepening reform. And I was thinking maybe that would mark some sort of a signal. And in March, when the president was meeting, I think a dozen American CEOs, and as well as Graham Allison, the founding dean of Harvard Kennedy School, he also told the visiting Americans that China was planning major reforms. And so I put it out in my newsletter, Technology. So that's what I thought at the time, and I'm glad the Third Plenary Session in July will cover reforms.
I think she often mentions about deepening the reform comprehensively in his inspections. And I think it's hard to imagine if the plenary session will not happen this year, right? Because he mentioned that so often. And another point that we should let the audience know is that I think the main agenda of the Third Plenum, which is study the issues concerning further deepening the reform comprehensively and advancing Chinese modernization.
All right, let me stop you right there. I mean, these two terms, we see them all the time. They appear all the time in Chinese official documents, but what do they mean? Can we have a short and brief explanation for our viewers, please?
Well, it's indeed a mouthful. So let me take the first,
Please.
The comprehensively deepening reform, because obviously, as Jiang has said, the Third Plenary Session of the 11th Central Committee took place in 1978. Ever since then, it has been over 40 years. So rounds and rounds of changes, of reforms. So I think since the Third Plenary Session in 2013, it means comprehensively deepening, basically more and more in-depth reforms in the future. That's what the term implies.
So basically, reform pro plus max, right?
Well, you apparently are an Apple fan.
Yes, I do use Apple. I confess.
So I'll leave the next term, the Chinese-style modernization or the China's path to modernization, to you, huh?
Well, Chinese modernization, it has 5 aspects, but I'm not sure you want me to recite the full version here today. Let me put it in this way. The Chinese modernization is different from the Western development model. For instance, it emphasizes modernization for 1.4 billion people. So every person can should benefit from the modernization path.
Common prosperity, right?
Common prosperity, for instance, right? Yeah, and also it's emphasized peaceful development. I think in our last episode, we actually discussed this a little bit, right? The peaceful development of China.
Right. Which is super relevant today.
Yeah. Because there is all this talk about China wanting to start a war or actively preparing a war or expansion. But as we underlined in our last episode, where we talked about a foreign affairs article, and we underlined that what Jiang has just said is the official summary by the CPC and the Chinese government about basically the path and the direction of the Chinese development. And the authorities keep telling people that we are on a peaceful road, and this is the road we will keep going down. So I don't think that's warmongering, domestically.
Right. Yeah, obviously, we won't have enough time to cover the entirety of the Chinese modernization, but luckily, Xinhua Institute, which sponsors our show, has just rolled out a very comprehensive report explaining what that is. So the link is down below. Be sure to check it out.
Well, basically, the municipal government became a venture capitalist. And a former local leader of Hebei probably says, we are the people's government and we are trying to make money for the people.
The Chinese modernization is different from the Western development model. For instance, it emphasizes modernization for 1.4 billion people. So every person should benefit from the modernization path.
Common prosperity, right?
Common prosperity, yeah. And also, it emphasizes peaceful development. I think